everybody, this is Freddy with FreddyCanFly, and in today's video we are going to be continuing on with the Specter 700 build. We're going to be looking at doing the frames for right now. We've got the main rotor done in the previous segment, so if you haven't seen that yet and you want to start there, feel free to do so. With the frame, guys, it's really easy and straightforward. Just like in my last video, I'm going to be throwing up on screen the steps that I have used to get to certain points, or as we're progressing just overall in general. The first couple of steps listed in the manual, honestly guys, you can see I've already got a little bit of an assembly here. It may seem a little odd to kick off a video with half the frame built already, but realistically it shows you each and every little step for the most part, so that could probably take up way more time than it needs to. I mean, legitimately, you can look in the manual and it will show you the anti-rotation bracket and the 2 bolts to put it in, and moves on to the next step. So I found that after the anti-rotation bracket and the back tray and everything here, all of a sudden then it just jumped to showing, and I'll throw it up on the screen here. There you go. So when you look at that, you can see that it's got just both pieces kind of unsandwiched, and it got a little crazy real fast, so I had to kind of sit and piece everything together. So I figured the best way to do it is I went ahead and followed all the steps there, and as you guys can see, this is what the completed form will look like. A couple of things to note. Let's go from the back forward. The tail clamps, okay, they are basically identical. It does want these, I'm assuming these might be for pinning the boom, but it wants these facing towards the right hand side of the frame. One of the two, however, does have 2 extra screws right on the bottom. That one needs to face in because that's going to support the plate on the bottom. It was really hard to tell that from the diagram that it shows. So good tip there. Everything else pretty straightforward. I am not at this time going to be installing the servo. My servos haven't arrived yet. They're KSTs, so they'll probably take a little while. I'm just going to go ahead and hold off on the servos, and we'll do a video on the servo and electronical component installation once the main frame's done. But at this time, just note that that's where your elevator servo would go, and I just went ahead and loosely put in, pre-tapped the little anchors in the back, and then put the shims on. That way I don't lose anything as I progress through my build. Next thing to talk about is the belt tensioners. Now mine was the upgraded kit, you guys. See if I can get in a little bit closer for you here. Mine was the upgraded kit, so I got the new belt tensioner. It does not tell you in the manual how to properly install this. It shows you how to use the old one. So if that's your case, follow the manual. If you've got the new one, it's pretty simple. You just put the platform on the inside with the shorter bevel on the bottom here. You can see that. And then the bolts go through. There is no shims on the pulley, so when you put your bolt through, make sure you Loctite it and just give it a quick little love tap snug, and make sure that your pulley is free, but there's no gap or no excessive play or anything on it, okay? And then on the outside, it's simple. You just throw in the little shim, bolt her down, and you're good to go. So that one's pretty easy and straightforward. You will have to get out, again, it shows this almost at a later time, but get out your servo mounts. There's a bottom one and there's also a top one, because those bolts are going to be in conjunction with the main shaft support. And we've got a triple bearing block that we're working with here. So you've got this one has a really cool like encaged body. I really like the design of that. I'm just thinking for additional support. And then the bottom bearing support, my bad, also has a set of screws on the bottom, which I'm going to assume is going to be used for holding on another piece of the frame, like the battery tray or so forth. One other quick thing too, guys, is on the canopy supports, I did notice as well, this was kind of cool. So in the back here where it goes, you'll notice that it sinks, it actually recesses all the way down into the frame. And that's what this little shim piece here is going to be for. This keeps the bolt from going all the way out, but it also lets you mount on the support. Then just one extra bolt on the bottom. The manual does clearly specify that, but I just thought that was a really nice feature, very well designed. So I'm going to go ahead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this more or less of like a left to right side build, just so we can understand everything. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to go ahead and loosely fit on things like the motor mount. We'll take a look at getting the other side on. Actually, it looks like in the manual it'll have us do the battery tray next. So let me get everything else pre-assembled, before I close it up with the right hand side, we'll just do a quick recap, make sure we're all on the same page, and then we'll seal it up and we'll move on to the next steps. Okay guys, so real quick here, I've went ahead and I've installed the motor mount. A couple things I wanted to talk to you with this motor mount in particular real quick before we kind of progress on too far. I am not, again, installing my electronics at this point. Now would be the best time to install your motor, of course, because I'm going to have to take this back out in order to actually fasten down the motor, which it's a really easy piece to take out. It's not really too big a deal. The manual, again, was a little bit tricky on the specifications, but from what I made out is each of your motor support blocks here have the screws in front for this little X bracket. So you'll put that on. Obviously, the orientation on the bottom support, you're gonna have your 2 screws for your bottom plate. Make sure that's on there. Don't get that reversed. And then with the top one, the recess is going to be pointing down. So essentially, from a side view, you've got the bearing is more sat down, whereas the top isn't, going to be completely flush. Okay, so take note on those. And then, of course, once the motor's loose, it is going to be able to slide forward and backwards. So we could do things like setting up our pinion mesh and everything. So once I get my motor, I'll then be able to install that part. But I just wanted to show you guys. Also, if you have the upgraded kit like myself, it does not specify in the manual at all where these little additional supports go that they include in. There's 2 of them. One of them is going to go right here, right under where the motor will sit. So this spot on the frame, right above the servo support, right there. Second one goes right underneath the pulley, and there's a spot on the frame for it right there. Okay, so let me show you that from the inside. That's where these 2 pieces will go. You've got 1 and you've got 2. Does not specify that in the manual, so make sure if you have those, you include those in. What I'm going to go ahead and do on the next part is I'm going to basically, guys, I'm going to build the frame left side to right. That way we can keep looking at everything inside as we progress. So my right side, I'm just going to keep, well, right over here to the right for right now. Next part I'm going to do actually is we're going to go ahead and install this part here. This appears to be the battery tray system, or at least the rails for sliding it. Once this part's really easy. I mean, it literally attaches by just the 4 bolts you have right here on the bottom of your main bearing block and your motor support block. I'm going to get that attached, and then I'm going to go ahead and put on my left side of the lower frame. So it's going to have you take out a couple of these screws, and then your left side of the frame will fit on down here, kind of like that. So I'm going to get all of that done, and then we should be able to do one final review, and then we can seal up the right hand side, and our frame assembly should basically be done. I will go ahead and there's a step for assembling the landing gear. I'll just do that in the background, and I'll come back and recap with that too. But I will throw up the manual pages and everything. So let me get this done, and then we'll come back. Okay guys, so here she is. We have everything as of right now assembled to the left hand side of the frame. It's dramatically bigger than I was thinking it was going to be per the manual, so that's not a bad thing, of course. I took a couple additional steps and installed some of the other parts. Like, again, we got the battery tray in, and again, this kit in particular, it comes with the quick release battery tray system. Doesn't specify it in the manual, but again, it's dummy proof, guys. You just throw in 2 little screws on the bottom here that hold a little plate, and then you just do 2 screws on the top that holds this. You lift this up, boom, battery locks into place, and it's rugged too. I really like that. Canopy standoffs and everything are all on. What I plan on doing, guys, with this particular build is, since I like to keep my wiring as clean as possible, I am going to go ahead, now that I know the layout of the machine, I feel as though I'll be able to successfully wire and assemble the electronical components, mostly to the left side. I mean, you'll have 2 servos on this side of the frame, and then of course you'll have 2 servos on the other side of the frame. So I'll have to find a way to work that out, but with the fly barless system and the ESC, I'll be using the Pulse Defender, so the backup guard. A lot of that, my satellites, I'm going to keep on the left-hand side. The reason I'm going to do this is because I just discovered if I have a crash and I need to bust in and get into my motor or any of my other internal components, it's always so much easier to just be able to remove one side. And if your wires are all intertwined and getting crazy and you got to tear out both sides or start unplugging stuff, to me, I don't like that. So this would be how I would maintenance my machine, right? I would just pop off this one side, and guys, it's literally two components, right? It's just this one plate, a couple of screws, and then it's going to be just this one plate, a couple of screws, unplug one servo or two servos, and boom, you're good. So besides the landing gear, which I did get assembled, it's just kind of off camera here. I got the landing gear. It's actually really nice. It's like a really nice shiny plastic. I don't know if that's Delrin or not, but I like the way they look. They almost have a metallic look to them, so it makes them look nice. I am curious here. It looks like on your back post you almost have a gigantic ball link. So I'm wondering if our boom supports are ball link connected or not. So I'm pretty stoked about that. But overall, what I'm going to do real fast, guys, is I'm going to get the right-hand side completely fastened down. Again, if you follow this video, I will be Loctiting everything on the left-hand side. That way I do not have to disassemble. But I will keep a mental note, as I do with all my builds. None of my right-hand side bolts will be fully Loctited down. I'm going to snug them all down, of course, that way I can map out all my electronics. But let me get all that done. We'll come back with a completely finished product. I'll put the landing gear and all that stuff on. One quick note, you guys, that I had to point out. I did make a goof a little bit earlier in the video, and hopefully I was able to post it up on the screen. That way you guys didn't make the same mistake. But I had an issue with my battery tray at first, because when I was putting it in, it would only slide in about that far, so I couldn't get the quick release system to work. And what I did not realize is that I misread the manual earlier, because this tail clamp that goes in the front, I had the support plate on the front of it, so it was stopping my battery tray from going back far enough. So what I just did is I just flipped it around, and now you can see, hopefully you can see if I can get some lighting in there. The bolts for it are now going to be right here in the back. And that allowed for, oh, this thing's big, man. That allowed for my battery tray to slide all the way back and then lock into place. So just something I wanted to point out in case you guys ran into that same thing, because I kind of gave you some wrong information at the beginning. So for that, I apologize. But yeah, everything else is good to go. Let me get this completely assembled. I'll get the landing gear on, and I'm just going to go ahead and slip in the main rotor and the main gear, probably just to kind of keep them safe. I like to keep all my parts together. So let's get that done. Let's come back. We'll do a final review before moving on to the tail build. Alrighty, guys, so here it is. We have the semi-finished product, we'll call it. I'm not going to call it the whole finished product, but both frames assembled, everything's good to go. Again, I know I've said it probably a bunch of times, but the left side, I went ahead and I Loctited everything appropriately, of course. I mean, I didn't Loctite my motor and stuff in yet because I'm going to have to remove that, but just my frame parts. Right-hand side, I just really hand tightened down because I'm going to remove both these plates again when I go ahead and do my servo install and everything. We got the landing gear. Completely simple to install. I really like the landing gear setup. I haven't found the set screws yet for my my little struts here, so I haven't installed those, but I'll look around and find them. Really curious again. A ball link goes here, so I'm kind of excited to see what the boom supports are going to look like. Everything else went together just seamlessly, guys. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful build. It's going to look even nicer once I get everything all wired, all spotless, nice and clean. And we'll just kind of see how this thing turns out overall. So that's going to be the mainframe assembly thus far for the XL Power 700. I'm sorry, Specter 700, made by XL Power. And the next video is going to be the tail assembly, followed by electronics install. We'll do a final flight review, and after that, this bad boy will be airworthy. So, as always, guys, thank you so very much for watching. Remember, if Freddy can fly, so can you. Fly safe, my friends.